A great deal of questions I receive are in reference to panels created by families and the commission. However, no one has asked how those panels were viewed or accepted when it came to the commission. Throughout the mob's history, every family, for one reason or another, has put panels in place. By way of example, would be if a member or members of the administration are incarcerated, or a panel is used as a way to insulate the boss. For instance, Gigante, the Genovese boss, used panels for this very reason. The Genovese family has been playing hide the boss long before Chin became its leader. It was a method that worked for them and one that kept law enforcement in the dark. Chin was a long-standing commission member, an elder statesman, so to speak. And following the murder of Paul Castellano, he obviously held himself on a higher level than his fellow commission members. And as far as his role in the commission, he had a lot to say. As far as Chin was concerned, the other commission members, the fellow bosses, were not considered old-timers. They represented a new generation and a new way of thinking. Following the sentencing of Carmine Persico in 1987, as most of us know, he placed his brother Alley Boy in the acting boss position. By doing so, it was a statement that he had no intentions of stepping down as boss. His true intentions was to make his son, Little Alley Boy, the acting boss. But Carmine Persico had a kink in his plan, and this was due to his brother Alley Boy jumping bail on a 1980 loan sharking case and was living as a fugitive. On November 9, 1987, after receiving several tips, the FBI traced Alley Boy to West Hartford, Connecticut, and arrested him at an apartment on Highland Street. On December 18, 1987, Alphonse Persico was sentenced to 25 years and told the sentencing judge, "This sentence I'm getting now is a death sentence for me." And he was right. He died from throat cancer while at a federal medical center on September 12, 1989. Being that Little Alley Boy was incarcerated since 1986 from a racketeering conviction, and with his brother Alley Boy now out of the equation, Carmine Persico put a ruling panel in place. Initially, the panel consisted of Vincent Angelino, Joe Tomasello, and Benny Alloy. And over time, Jojo Russo and Vic Orena would be included. Typically, commission meetings were for bosses to get together for various reasons, and this would include underbosses if need be. When families put panels in place, those panel members would attend commission meetings. And this didn't sit well with Chin, who told the Colombos and any other family with panels to pick one person to represent them during commission meetings, basically saying, "Get your act together." But only the Colombos pushed back by sending Chin a response that any member in an acting position, specifically the administration, warrants sitting at commission meetings. If you look at it from Chin's point of view, he took the commission serious and, more importantly, held it to the highest regard. For the most part, he was used to dealing with old-timers such as Tony Ducks, Paul Castellano, Rusty Ristelli, Carmine Persico, etc. And without question, he had control over his own family. But when it came to power, he wanted to control commission decisions as well. By nature, he was a secretive guy and went to great lengths to keep his position under wraps. So for him, sitting at commission meetings with guys he's never met had to feel like the exposure he tried so hard to avoid was now putting him at risk. Not only would these new people be his equal in a commission meeting, he had to be concerned that any one of them could expose him to law enforcement, which would make his crazy act all for nothing. So aside from control, he was trying to keep himself insulated. As for the Colombo's position, with Chin's demand to pick one person, they weren't going to let the boss of another family dictate to them. The New York Mafia not only created the acting positions, but accepted them. During his time, Chin's put numerous people in acting capacities, and those positions were respected. So the Colombos felt that Chin's demand was not respecting their people, who were also in acting positions, and they were right. Remember, not everyone respected Chin and the way he pranced around the street in a bathrobe. They respected him as a boss, I'm sure, but that had nothing to do with respecting the way he carried himself. A panel acts for the boss as a ruling body. Essentially, panel members are bosses. So by Chin making his demand, he really wasn't respecting the panels. On the flip side, Chin has sent panel members or people in acting positions in his place at commission meetings, displaying a double standard. But the situation regarding the Colombo family would take a big change, which caused Chin to focus even more on them, as he felt they represented a threat in regard to the commission. In a move that Carmine Persico believed would protect and assure his son's succession, he disbanded the panel and placed Vic Orena in the acting boss position. At the time, John Gotti was the boss of the Gambino family, and it was no secret that Chin couldn't stomach Gotti. What Gotti wanted to do was try to outflank Chin, and the only way to accomplish this was to bring the Colombo family into his fold. He already had the Bananos, which only gave him an extra commission vote, but by gaining the Colombo vote, he possessed a majority vote. The Lucchese family would vote with Chin, so the Colombo vote became crucial in controlling the commission. Vic Orena looked for Gotti's guidance, and Gotti was only too happy to offer it. Unbeknownst to Orena, Gotti had an ulterior motive. But to be fair, Orena enjoyed his time as acting boss, and the thought of handing over the reins to little alley boy was not something he wanted to do. He knew when he was given the position that he was only warming the seat. In the world of the mob, people talk and word travels. So Gotti's tight bond with the newly appointed acting boss of the Colombo family definitely reached Chin's ears. This was a guy that didn't become the boss by being naive. He was shrewd and sharp, and by no means a dummy. So when Vic Orena decided he wanted the top position to be a permanent one, either on his own or on the advice of Gotti, he appealed for the commission to make a ruling and consent to him becoming the official boss of the Colombo family. If Orena thought that the commission would pave the way for him, he was sadly mistaken. Keep in mind, Chin was in that decision-making. So what the commission did was put the problem back in Orena's lap and send him back to the drawing board. He was told to let the captains in the family decide who they wanted as their boss, forcing Orena to go to Carmine Sessa, the family's consigliere and Persico loyalist, and suggest polling the captains, which, as we know, Sessa had no intentions of doing. He instead sent word to Carmine Persico about what Orena was intending to do. Had Sessa not sent word to Persico and went ahead and polled the captains, he'd be putting his life in jeopardy. I think a lot of people wonder how it would have played out if the captains were polled and actually chose Orena. We know it did happen. Orena's suggestion of polling the captains became a pivotal point in the family entering an internal war. A war that had Gotti on the sidelines instigating it, because a great deal depended on its outcome. On June 20th, 1991, a Persico hit team, including Sessa, set themselves up on Orena's block in Long Island. It just so happened that Orena arrived home earlier than expected and spotted them. From that moment, the war was on. And the Persico faction missed their opportunity to end things on that day. Nonetheless, the war would go on for almost 2 years. As for Orena, he was arrested on April 4th, 1992, but his arrest didn't end the war. It came to an end as the result of what took place on October 20th, 1993, when Joey Scopo, Orena's underboss, was shot and killed outside of his house by a Persico hit team. Strangely enough, the two people who had the most at stake with the outcome of the war were bosses from other families, specifically the Genovese and Gambino families. And both bosses, Chin and Gotti, would have to deal with legal troubles well before the war ended. John Gotti received a life sentence in June of 1992, and Chin would be indicted twice in 1990 and 1993, which earned him a 12-year sentence by 1997, with an additional 3 years in 2003. Here's a fact. The majority of mob stories end with one common denominator. There are no winners, only losers.